Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool. Happy Friday. Happy E3 Eve, everybody. Tomorrow, we start to get all the news. It starts to it's already starting to trickle in. The leaks are everywhere. People have been releasing video content. We know a lot of the big announcements and a lot of the stuff that's coming, but the deluge is really going to get started tomorrow with Electronic Arts, and then definitely on Sunday with Xbox and Bethesda. And then Blake and I are headed down to Los Angeles, and we're going to be covering all of the big announcements and, checking out the Ubisoft press conference and the Square Enix press conference. I can't wait for that Avengers reveal. We've got a lot of fun things to get into today. Our guest is Jeff Cannata, who is part of a new show called The Dungeon Run. We're going to find out all about that and also talk about E3. But first, we have a rundown to get to, and this one is dedicated to Casey Stockstill, who says, Vic, so glad to rediscover EP. Watched you on G4, and Lorne is great as always. That's a comment on our recent interview with Lorne Lanning talking about Oddworld Soulstorm, which is one of the big games being revealed at E3, and I got some hands-on time with that. It was terrific. All right, let's get started with Casey's rundown. After more than a decade of problems, Nathan Drake is finally heading to theaters. Sony Pictures has announced that the long-in-development Uncharted movie will finally hit theaters on December 18th, 2020. Filming is slated to begin in the coming months, with Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland, as the heroic lead, Nathan Drake, and the film is helmed by 10 Cloverfield Lane director Dan Trachtenberg. This brings to an end years of development hell. Hollywood first began working on an Uncharted movie when the first game came out in 2007, and it's gone through several different actors and directors since then. With a release date in place, it sounds like it's finally the real deal. And I'll tell you what, they got the right guy to direct this movie. Dan Trachtenberg used to be part of the group called the Totally Rad Show, working with Jeff Cannata, our guest today, and Alex Albrecht, who is the creator of The Dungeon Run. So all of the worlds are coming together, which is crazy. I love Tom Holland. I think he's a fantastic actor. He's my favorite of the Spider people, the Spider dudes. Actually, I think I might like the guy that plays Miles Morales a little bit more. But I do love him as Peter Parker. He's fantastic. He doesn't look like Nathan Drake to me. He's a little too small. He's a little too young looking. And I hate to be ageist. But maybe they're doing the kid version of Nathan Drake or whatever. But I've already posted about this. When Tom Holland was announced that he's going to be taking over the role, I still think that Miles Teller should have been the guy. He has the physique and the look and the smart-ass kind of quality about him. I know I've heard that he's kind of a nightmare and he's, done some things that have pissed people off. Okay, but, if I was going to bank on a young guy to kind of grow into that role and represent that role and isn't already Spider-Man, I would probably go for somebody like that. That's not to say Tom Holland won't do a great job. I have, immeasurable faith in him, but even more faith in Dan Trachtenberg, who is an enormous fan of video games. I think he is on record talking about how much he would dream to be a director on an Uncharted film. And I think he wanted probably to cast Jeff Cannata as Nathan Drake, which would have been amazing. I'm excited that this movie is coming. It's clearly in the vein of the Indiana Jones films. That's what Amy Hennig and all the people at Naughty Dog were conceiving when they created the first Uncharted adventures for us. And, I think there's tons of room in the in movie theaters for films like this, and I don't think they're going to screw it up. I think it's going to be okay, but I think that they could have gone in some more interesting. Maybe Robert Pattinson would have been a good. Oh, okay. Let's move on. Some big, massive changes have come to the Destiny universe. Developer Bungie has announced the first big changes they're making to the game following their split with publisher Activision. For starters, a slimmed-down version of the base game is going free to play, allowing anyone to jump in, with Bungie now earning their revenue from the sale of additional content like expansions. That additional content will also now be sold individually rather than in season pass bundles like before, so players can buy the specific content that they want. Destiny 2 is also getting cross-platform saves, so you can jump from one system to the other. Finally, an all-new expansion called Shadowkeep is coming in September, offering new story missions and in a new location on Earth's moon. Now that Bungie is in charge, all the decisions about the game will be made by them and not Activision, so fans obviously have very high hopes, especially given the game's shaky reputation up until now. I think this is the right move on Bungie's part, and I think it kind of suggests a future for the looter-shooter genre in general, which is so much based on a buying public coming and supporting your game over many months and getting sucked into the experience with pals and saying, okay, well, let's keep meeting up every Tuesday night, and yes, of course, we're going to have to buy all the new stuff and that's what these games have been able to monetize on already. But there has been this pretty high price, this big, you got to spend the full priced amount to get in. That ticket price has been expensive, and I think that has been, and this happened with Destiny, it happened with The Division, it happened with Anthem. That's been that sort of that consternation for fans out there. People dig the whole concept, and they like the idea of sharing time and exploring these adventures. But if it costs a lot of money up front, they want as much of that sort of content figured out for them as possible. And of course, it takes months and months and months for these massive epic scale pieces of material to get built and delivered to everybody. And so there's been a lot of like, well, let's do it backwards and let's go this way, and everybody's green now, and that's pissed off a lot of people. And so I think that this is the right approach. Give it to them for free. There's enough built between the two Destiny games now, enough assets, enough worlds, enough geometry, enough stuff that they can kind of pull from to build a nice entree for people to kind of jump in and get a feel for it, and then they will pay if they get that hook. And I think Bungie is kind of banking on that they will. They've had massive success at growing an audience. There was a lot less skepticism about this kind of games as a service model when Destiny 1 was announced. And I think a lot of people felt a little bit burned that they didn't get to just carry over right from Destiny 1 into Destiny 2. It was kind of like fresh start. But I think this is kind of the right approach for a free-to-play model, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited to jump back in. I'm definitely excited to see new people taking the chance to jump into this experience, because it's world class. I mean, the one thing you can say about Destiny, even if it gets repetitive, even if it feels like you're spending a lot and you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again, the mechanics are amazing. It's really fun and easy to play, and it's really fun to play with other people. So Bungie knows this. They're banking on themselves, and I think it will be all right. We got Jamie is excited about that. All right, and one new platform that will run Destiny 2 and loads of other games is Google's Stadia. The tech giant has announced launch details for their new cloud game streaming service. It will launch this November in North America and Europe, and will offer a pro subscription tier, which costs $12 a month in Canada and gives access to streaming in 4K at 60 frames per second, along with 5.1 surround sound. That's available by itself or as part of the $170 Founders Edition. That's what it costs in Canada, which comes with a 3-month subscription, controller, and other perks. After launch, there will be a cheaper base subscription tier, which only offers streaming in HD, so 1920 by 1080, and not 4K. Google says you'll need an internet connection of at least 35 megabits per second for everything to run smoothly at 4K. As for games, Stadia will launch with 30 titles, mostly from third-party publishers like Ubisoft, Bethesda, and EA, and there will also be an exclusive title called Guilt, which is a survival horror game from the makers of Rime, and they spell Guilt with G-Y-L-T, and they spell Rime with R-I-M-E. So someone needs to buy this developer a dictionary. But people are wondering if Stadia is going to be a success. And of course, I've seen all kinds of YouTube videos popping up that they're ripping us off and they're charging and it's going to fail and this is not going to launch properly and there's going to be all kinds of problems. And there may be. I think it's ridiculous to predict that now. I think it's not beneficial to the games industry in general to just crap all over this concept. This is a concept that the business in general has been moving towards. if any company is kind of situated well enough to kind of handle the mechanics and the monetary expenditures to be able to pull this off, it's Google or Amazon. It's one of these massive giants out there. And I think we should just take a bit more of a wait and see, and let's project a little bit of optimism towards this idea. Yes, there's a lot of things in here that kind of change our whole access to this content, but I don't think that's a terrible thing. The change is it's not something to be kind of horrified about. They're going to be able to work out the deals with internet service providers to be able to offer some special services, I'm sure, for people that are worried about hitting their cap on data or not having fast enough internet. Google's banking on people having fast enough internet for not just this, but for their future products. They're obviously thinking that video games are going to be a huge part of the entertainment diet out there. They're obviously thinking that why bother, coming out with hardware to compete with all the other types of hardware that are out there when they can do all the server-side kind of number crunching and give us, hopefully, at least in their pitch and their presentation and their speculation and in their planning, stuff that we can't even run on systems that are, not thousands and thousands of dollars for us to buy now, with RTX cards and ray tracing and all that. So, I mean, the games conceivably that they're going to be able to stream to us are going to look incredible. Now, I know it seems impossible. It sounds like a future that is years away, not months away. But I want to give Google the benefit of the doubt. I'm hoping that there is some success with this. They had a successful test of 1080p Assassin's Creed last year, and I think they have very smart people and they've got big dollars in the bank. So let's see how they do with all this, because what will happen if this works is more people will play. It will drive the access to games and the barrier to games down a little bit, which means more consumers sort of jumping in. And of course, they'll get the free games that Stadia is going to be offering, but they'll try some things. And think about how many times you've been in a store or even in your own library and you haven't clicked on a game to download it, or you decided not to go to the shelf to go and pick one up and stick it into your machine just because you don't want to waste that time of loading and then waiting for something to kind of update and all that. Imagine the idea, and this is all, it hasn't really been proved out yet. I get that, but imagine the idea of, I heard this was cool, I'm going to try it. Boom, you're in it. You're playing it instantly. That's a pretty cool future. That's a pretty cool concept, and I think that's going to lead to people, tasting all kinds of new ideas and new types of games, and then that's inevitably going to lead to investment in creating new types of content that kind of transforms the business into a more accessible one, and it may challenge the games as service model directly, like the fact that you get all of this stuff that Destiny is going to be selling as part of your Stadia subscription. You get that first game. It's all yours. All of that stuff is unlocked, including the new expansion pack. So it has the potential to really ratify everything, and I think it's just silly to be trashing it right now, even if the trashing this stuff gets good clicks. I just think it's crazy. Let them launch this stuff. I know Phil Harrison and Jade Raymond personally, and they're good people, and they've launched lots and lots of exciting products in their respective careers. I trust that they are working on some exciting things here, and I know that they've staffed up with really awesome people. The fact that we've got some hot games already kind of being announced as partners to the Stadia concept is great. So all I'm saying is, let's give them a few more months before we start trashing all of this stuff, okay? Let them at least get us closer to launch. And speaking of Stadia, E3 doesn't kick off until next week, but 3 new games have already been announced. First up, the long-rumored Baldur's Gate 3 is now official. It picks up after the events of the last game, which was released almost 20 years ago, and we'll see the humans take on the deadly Mind Flayers and the Nautiloids. Original developer BioWare isn't involved, and neither are the studios behind the more recent enhanced editions of the first 2 games. The new project is instead being made by Divinity Original Sin developer Larian Studios, so hopefully it lives up. No release window yet. Next, THQ Nordic has unveiled the rumored new Darksiders project. It's called Darksiders Genesis, and it's not a third-person game like Darksiders 3, but instead a top-down RPG similar to Diablo. That will launch later this year on consoles and the PC, including Google Stadia. Finally, the 3D platformer Yooka-Laylee is getting a sequel called Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. It doesn't use a 3D perspective and instead combines 2.5D platforming with top-down puzzle sequences, and that arrives later this year, and all of these games will be shown off at E3 next week. I've played a little bit of the I think I could talk about this. I played a little bit of the Darksiders Genesis, and it's fun. And it definitely does feel like Diablo, and it's a different take on the whole, Darksiders mythology, but it kind of proves out that the mythology that was crafted originally by Vigil Studios, I think, Vigil Games, they did a great job just making something that felt kind of permanent, And I'm so happy that THQ Nordic is keeping the Darksiders flame alive. I didn't play so much of the game that I have a real opinion on it. I can't review it yet, but I got a nice tasty chunk, and I enjoyed myself. There were a couple of things that were a little hard to decipher and figure out where I was supposed to go, but I had lots of fun beating up the bad guys and solving some puzzles and earning myself some cool loot. Now, the Baldur's Gate 3 announcement was actually in the Google Stadia video with a clip from the team at Larian, and I can't believe what a great fit this is. Divinity Original Sin, fantastic games, and that's a great fit for Baldur's Gate 3. I know that team was incredibly influenced by the Baldur's Gate games, so this is going to be very cool to see all of this happening, and it's going to be one of the games that we're going to be able to play on Stadia, so I'm psyched about that too.